Welcome everyone to the Bent by Knowledge podcast, where we will dig into what current research and the Bible actually have to say about exercise and good nutrition. All right, welcome everybody. Today here, we are talking about something so exciting. It's going to be the Enneagram, which is a personality test, and how your personality relates to how you can effectively change your exercise and nutrition behaviors to best suit your personality. And to talk about that, I have Katie Hirsch, Dr. Katie Hirsch, I should say, and she will explain a little bit about herself, but she is a professional in exercise and nutrition and also a woman of faith. And so she knows a lot about the Enneagram and is the perfect person for the job. So Katie, I'll let you explain in a little bit more detail about all your credentials and let people know why you are qualified to talk about these things.
Well, thanks for having me. Super excited to be talking about this. Like we were saying, not something that always gets talked about in the Enneagram realm. So excited to do this. But about me, so my true expertise is in exercise physiology. I did my undergrad at Truman State, which is a small school in Missouri, where I did exercise science and ran cross country and track. And that's where I really fell in love with exercise physiology and research and being able to ask questions to improve my performance, which then kind of morphed into health overall. So then I went to the University of North Carolina, where I got my master's and PhD, working under Dr. Abby Smith-Ryan. And there our research focused a lot on nutrition and exercise to help improve body composition, so fat loss, muscle gain, as well as working with your metabolism. So how do we do that most efficiently? And then ultimately, that's what led me now to Little Rock, where I'm a postdoc fellow at the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences, where I focus on protein and muscle and clinical and military populations. So learning lots of cool things there and just furthering all this health nutrition stuff.
Yeah, and definitely an expert in exercise and nutrition. So I'm so excited to be talking to you. And in fact, we have known each other for a long time. We go back a couple years. The lab that I did my PhD in we're collaborators with your lab. And then it just so happened that you ended up in Little Rock when I was in Little Rock. So
yeah, such a small world. It's so crazy it ended up that way.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, the topic of conversation today, like I said, is the Enneagram. And if you have no idea what the Enneagram is, stay tuned. Katie's going to be talking all about it. But if you just want to think about it like this, it's a personality test. It gives you an idea of what makes you function, how you fit into society, basically, and your personality. And I wanted to talk about this so much because I've been on a journey myself this past year. About a year-ish ago, I had one of my spiritual mentors ask me to take the Enneagram test. And I was like, what is that? I'm skeptical. Don't know if I want to take it, but I did. And I found out, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, that I'm an Enneagram 7, which means a lot, but what I started to learn about myself is that a lot of my behaviors in exercise and nutrition were so Enneagram 7, it was ridiculous. And the thing about it is that for the longest time, I was sitting there and I was thinking, I'm an exercise professional, I'm a nutrition professional, and I struggled so hard with maintaining things like a lifting program. I could go in the gym and I can lift like crazy, but I could not stick to a lifting program. Same thing with like an eating program or meal prep, just never worked for me. And I was like, is there something wrong with me? I had no idea. Like, I know all about these things, but I just can't stick with it. And when I found out that I was an Enneagram 7, I was like, it all makes sense. It makes sense now. And now I've learned more about myself and I learned more about how I can adjust my behaviors and what to look out for in those behaviors to be able to function more properly, honestly. And I think that in the exercise and nutrition world today, when we're looking at in practice, so, gym settings, dietitians and things like that, there's such a disconnect. There can be a disconnect between identifying somebody's personality and how that is related to their habits and exercise and nutrition, we've sort of taken a one size fits all approach. And I think that that's doing a disservice to a lot of people. And so I really, really wanted to talk about this. And we were talking a little bit before when we did a quick search on this, there really isn't much there. And so it's exciting to dig through what we know and how we can relate it to the Enneagram. So before we go any further, I would like to talk about what the Enneagram is and maybe some resources for people that are interested in taking the test and seeing where they stand. So can you tell us what the Enneagram is and why people use it and how it can benefit them?
Yeah, for sure. So the Enneagram really, to me, it's less about like results of a test, kind of like other personalities. So a lot of people are familiar with like Myers-Briggs, or there's like a bazillion others, but all of them, you like take this test and then they give you these results of your strengths. Usually that's what gets focused on. And those things are great. But what I like about the Enneagram, it's more about like a journey of self-discovery. And I know that sounds really like voodoo-y and like whatever, but it really is. It's like more of a process, and the whole thing is a lot more fluid in nature. So it's less about like, this is your definition, and more about how does that primary definition of your personality, or that core part of your personality, and how does it change, and how does it look in different scenarios? So just to back up a little bit with my journey with the Enneagram. So I'm by no means like some kind of trained professional in the Enneagram. I just have a lot of interest in it, and it's helped me out a lot. So I first discovered it during a time when it was like kind of brought to my attention that my perceived personality or my perceived self wasn't aligning with my external self and how other people were like perceiving me, and not in a very good way. So I thought I was doing a lot of good and trying my hardest, and it was not coming off that way at all. And so that like really caught me off guard when it was brought to my attention that those weren't aligning. And I mean, nobody really likes to hear those kinds of things, but what really was scary for me was that I had no clue what I had done or what I was doing. Because again, in my mind, in myself, I 100% thought I was doing good things through and through. And so ultimately, like that sent me on this like journey. I was like, I've got to find some answers. Like this isn't okay. I'm not going to be super effective in what I do if it's not coming across appropriately. So I did a number of things, but ultimately I came across the Enneagram, and specifically I borrowed a book from a friend, and that book's called The Road Back to You. And it's a really good book, one I recommend to everybody, and is a good like first stop to learn about the Enneagram.
And we'll have the information for that book in the show notes too.
Yeah, for sure. So it's a really great book. Basically what that book does is they give you a background of the Enneagram and then have a chapter on each number. There's 9 numbers. In the beginning of each chapter, they give you like 20 bullet points of here are some common phrases that this number or this personality might say or identify with. And so what I usually encourage people to do is read through those bullet points and go through each number. And usually you can very quickly weed out some of the numbers. You look at them and you're like, that's not me, that's not me. But usually there's like maybe a few that you're like, those sound pretty right. And so ultimately it took me 3 months to figure out which number I was. I know that sounds like a really long time, but I had it narrowed down to 2. So as I did more reading, I was reading about both numbers, and then finally I figured out which one I was. So I'm an Enneagram 3. We'll talk about what that means.
Yes, she is.
Pretty stereotypical. And so anyway, yeah, once you get your number, I think then what it did is it really just like opened up to me, kind of like what you said, Brittany, like what helped put into words what the motivation behind everything I do is. Like, why do I respond to certain situations the way that I do? Am I attracted to certain types of exercise or nutrition, or why I'm even into research and why this like works for me, or why I respond positively or negatively in certain situations. And so that helped me be a lot more self-aware, and I've grown a lot through that and continuing to grow. But now I think it's kind of fun to go learn through each number once you like know about yours. And it's fun to think through other numbers and how they think differently, respond differently, which I think is helping me like learn to become a better coworker and leader and friend and all those kinds of things. So there's a lot to this. So we'll just kind of like slowly break it down. So some key things about the Enneagram, again, it is like a personality test. There's 9 core types. And so this type, usually you developed it as a child, and it's based off of different messaging or, you know, what messages you got as a child. We're all shaped by experiences and messages we got as a child. And so then we tend to take on this personality type that kind of drives all of our motivations and things. So you're usually put into 9 types. Those 9 types are then divided into 3 triads. So we have the anger or gut triad. Those are numbers 1, 8, and 9. These all are arranged in a circle. If you look up the Enneagram, the thing's in a circle. So 1, 8, and 9 are all next to each other, and they're driven by anger. Okay, so 8s tend to externalize their anger, 9s just like forget about it, and then 1s really internalize it. And so that changes how they're going to respond and be perceived and things like that. But they have this inner anger. Okay, so then there's the feeling or the heart triad. That's 2, 3, and 4. And these numbers are driven by feelings. So again, 2s are more external with it and focus on feelings. 3s, like myself, have trouble recognizing and identifying emotions and feelings. And then 4s tend to focus on their own feelings. So again, we have that external, forgetful, and then internal. And then our last triad is the fear or head triad. And so that's going to be 5, 6, and 7. And these numbers are driven by fear in different ways. And so 5s externalize it, 6s internalize it, and 7s forget about it or try to move past it. So we'll get into some of that more later. But all of these are just how you relate to the world and maybe think and plan through things is how these will come up. So then the really cool part about the Enneagram is all these numbers fall on a spectrum. So again, I'm a 3, so that's where I'm rooted. But if you want to think about it, like maybe I'm the color orange, but maybe I tend to fall more on the red end of the spectrum of orange. So I'm a little more red orange, whereas someone else who's a 3 might be a little more of a yellow orange. So it can change on these spectrums depending on what we call wings. And so the wings, you might tend to lean right or left towards the numbers that are next to you on the circle. So as a 3, I'm between numbers 4 and 2 on either side. I tend to go more towards the 2 side. So I'm going to show some 2 characteristics. And so this was actually why it was really hard for me to figure out my number. I lean pretty heavily towards a 2. And so there are a lot of 2 characteristics I identified with, but ultimately you have to tease out what your core motivation is in these things. But so you show characteristics of numbers next to you. The next thing we have, depending on if you're in a healthy state or an unhealthy state, I kind of think of that as moving up or down a spectrum. So if we're in a healthier state, our better characteristics come out, we're more aligned with who we are, and it's being perceived that way in the outer world, versus if we're in a more unhealthy state, maybe more stressed, our more negative qualities come out, or our strength qualities are no longer being perceived in a positive light. Our defensive mechanisms start coming out. So then don't think too much about this right now, but just for your further learning, when you're in a place of stress, you show characteristics of numbers across the circle from you in one direction. And when you're growing, you show characteristics of numbers on the other side. So this is why it can be hard to type yourself, and why I usually don't encourage a test. The test will usually give you like a few numbers that you might be, but ultimately you have to be very honest with yourself and think through like, okay, which one describes my core motivation? And also why we probably shouldn't try to type out other people. We do it, I do it, but ultimately we don't know the motivators behind other people. Plus, if they're in a healthy or unhealthy state, they may not look like their true number. So that can get tricky too. So it maybe is one of the more complicated personality tests, but it does, I think, give you a whole lot more information than other tests do, just because there's that fluidity between all the numbers. So that's kind of the basic background before we dive into each number, but I'll kick it back.
That was great and comprehensive, and I appreciate that. That was like a perfect, succinct introduction. And it is, I mean, it's freeing when you figure it out. And it is, like you said, it's difficult because you're a natural tenant. Like a lot of people say that they want to be somebody like a 7, or they want to be somebody like driven like a 3 or something like that. But you have to dig a little deeper and realize your internal motivations. And I had a problem with mine too, because I have sometimes a touch of 3. I was definitely 7, and I have a good amount of 8 in me too. And I realized that I'm a 7 wing 8, like the challenger in me sometimes come out, because I do like a little bit of discussion and and all that stuff. I think it's helpful in research, but it's great when you think about fitness and nutrition, because it just informs you so much about your behaviors. And so what we're going to do is we're going to dive right in, and it's going to be like an open discussion. And I want to talk about the 9 types from top to bottom. And to note, if you read the book, they go through the triad. So it's a little bit out of order in the book. I would highly recommend that book, but we're going to go in order from 1 to 9. And each of these types has a specific name that's associated with it. And really, I mean, the name tells all, but we're going to talk about a lot of the details, a lot of the stuff that Katie has mentioned with the basic fears and the desires, and some of maybe the vices that they go to in certain times, and then what they typically do in and around exercise, and some recommendations based on their Enneagram number to more optimally practice exercise and nutrition habits. So we are going to begin with type 1, who are the perfectionists. And I know, Katie, probably some people pop in your mind, and I know somebody that pops into my mind. And the more that I think about their nutrition and exercise, the more it makes sense, because the perfectionists are rational, they're idealistic, they are intentional and purposeful, they're very self-controlled. So, which we'll talk about in a little, like they can eat the same thing every single meal type of people. They're honest, they're dedicated and self-disciplined, responsible, ethical, all these things that make them great and strong. But then there are other things that will potentially hinder their process, things that we need to take into consideration. So Katie, can you talk about their basic fears and desires a little bit, and maybe some about their vices or sins?
Yeah, for sure. So a big thing with this type, and what tends to characterize a type 1, is they have this really strong sense of right and wrong. They want things to be very black and white. There's a right way to do things and a wrong way to do things. So their basic fear, because of that, is corruptness or imbalance or being bad. They don't want to do what's wrong. They really want to do what's right. So they tend to set these like rules for themselves, whether that rule's there or not all the way, but they like right and wrong. And so their basic desire then is for goodness, to have integrity and balance. So a lot of their core motivators, they're trying to avoid what's bad and what's wrong, while trying to seek what's good and balanced. So their vice or their sin tends to be anger, And that comes out towards their inability to achieve perfection. They're always frustrated or angry with themselves or others when things aren't perfect, because nothing can ever be perfect. So it just is a continual kind of battle for them. And they get quickly angry over, detailed type things sometimes. And so it often comes in the form of like smoldering or resentment. If you're a 1, you can maybe identify with some of those things. Again, this won't describe you perfectly for every single one, but this tends to be some core characteristics of a 1. And so they're usually motivated to live life the right way, improve the world, and then avoid fault and blame. So we can talk about how that's going to influence their exercise and nutrition choices.
Yeah. And I mean, just based on what we talked about, these people tend to be, I mean, you can't categorize them completely, but they tend to be really successful because they are perfectionists. And in an exercise setting, I've seen this play out all the time. I'm a coach at Orange Theory Fitness, and a lot of the people that we have in our facility are, doctors, lawyers, and these really successful researchers, things like that. And a good part of their nature, and then maybe a downfall, is that they have this issue with like an all or nothing type of mentality where they're going to go, and if they have a 60-minute workout, I'm going to give everything I have, because if I have to cut that thing short, it's not even worth going. And so I've noticed that a lot of the people that are in my fitness classes they either go completely hard, or if they're going to wake up late and not going to make it, they're just going to not do it at all and not come. So can you talk about any other things in exercise and nutrition that you've noticed with 1s?
Yeah, I think what I hear a lot when the people I know that are 1s and kind of their thing, they have this tendency to, if they don't think they can be perfect at it, or, if they're not able to follow a program perfectly, they just stop doing it. Like you said, like it's hard for them. It might be hard for them to accept that even if they do something, even if it's not perfect, that's still okay, and that's better than nothing. So that's like kind of the message we need to be telling them, is something is better than nothing. We don't have to do it perfectly every single time. And so, yeah, I think for them, just helping them to establish some things to get past that's going to be important.
Yeah, for sure. And the good thing about these people is when they're in that all state, they don't need a kick in the butt to get going at all. So in practice, coaches and dietitians and stuff, it's like these are the people that probably have the most motivation, or some of the most motivation in the whole bunch. So definitely highly motivated. But with all of that being said, they do need, like Katie said, they need to hear consistently that being perfect isn't everything. They can do a little bit of something and still be successful. Like these people are the type that they'll be at night and they'll be like, should I have a bowl of ice cream? And they'll think about it, and then they'll ultimately decide that they shouldn't, because it's either an all or nothing approach. So if they're trying to eat clean, they're going to eat clean. And I know people like that. So it's infuriating to me, because I'm like, how do you have so much discipline? But I'm like, that is just their personality. It's just how they function.
Well, and I say, what's life without ice cream? I mean, come on.
Hey, girl, preach. I'm saying. Yeah. Yeah. And so in practice, if you do find that there's an Enneagram 1 that you're trying to work with or friends with, and you're talking about fitness and nutrition, what's a good approach to have for them, especially in these areas?
Yeah, so I might suggest something short and structured. 1s are usually pretty busy, have a lot of things on their to-do list that they're trying to check off. So not doing anything that's going to take up a lot of time, so that it does fit nicely in with their busy schedule. Obviously, they like that structure usually. And then something that they might enjoy are things with clear rules or outcomes, not just kind of like these more of our open-ended, maybe expressive types of exercise they may not enjoy quite as much. So some ideas we kind of thought through, maybe something like Pilates or yoga, because there's set moves, set flows through things. So some of that might be good, as well as just the breathing and calming that comes with that might be good for them.
Yeah.
We also talked about maybe something like a martial arts, because again, there are like sequences and techniques to perfect things to really work for there. So they might enjoy some things like that. Some other things to think about, maybe more short, intense workouts. Again, something like HIIT to help get the energy out. And then it also, fits nicely within your schedule. So those might be some like first examples or things that might be beneficial.
Yeah. And I think so too. Because they're so motivated to do the right thing, they also have to know what is the right thing. So a lot of them, I would recommend doing their research. So however you do your research to determine what is the best approach to improving your health so that you can make that decision to decide what's right and what's proper for you. And like I said, they tend to be really self-disciplined. So I think structure seems to be something that's important to them too, is that structuring and saying, we have one day per week, one time per week that we're going to do meal prep, or we're going to go grocery shopping, is going to allow them to stay disciplined and consistent. So, yeah, definitely some things to consider there. They also love a challenge. So structured workouts, like you were saying, those short, explosive workouts, maybe where they have people around them and they're amped up by that energy so that it can challenge them to really work their best is good. So the first thing that comes to mind is like CrossFit or something like that, where they can really perform. So type 1, anything else you can think of with type 1s?
With exercise, or do you want to move to nutrition?
We can move to nutrition.
Yeah, so nutritionally, I think with them, it's going to be important, like things like recipes they really like, where there's steps and what rules, again, things to follow to make sure it comes out well. So for these people, it might be more helpful for them to like provide them with recipes or direct them to a recipe or a cookbook or a website that has recipes that they could follow and do. So things like that are going to be helpful. I think also, let's see, what else did we maybe talk about? Yeah, again, I think the meal planning is going to be helpful too, that if I already know what I'm going to make every day, and maybe prepped it even at the beginning of the week if they are really busy, then you don't feel stressed about deviating because the food's already made. So when something comes up in your schedule and it's busy, the food's there, you can just eat it, and you don't have to stress about trying to come up with something.
And the good thing about that is, they can eat the same thing every day. So that is perfect for them. Just make you some chicken, a little bit of potatoes and vegetables. Yeah, so that is the Enneagram 1. Now we're gonna move to Enneagram 2, which I just found out one of my sisters is the Enneagram 2, which totally makes sense. Like she was just born a nurturer. The Enneagram 2 is called the helper. She like embodies the Enneagram 2. It's crazy. And a lot of her her nutrition and exercise habits make a lot of sense now too. But these Enneagram 2s tend to be very caring. They're interpersonal, so they can, get along well with people. They're generous and people pleasing, so they love to serve others. I'm sure you can think of anybody in your life that's like that. On the flip side, they can tend to be a little possessive for that. And they love to bring the best out in others, which definitely makes sense. And what's really cool about the exercise and stuff that we'll talk about is that they're a huge fan of teamwork and being together in groups. So that definitely shows through, or can show through, with how they most effectively will work with exercise and nutrition. Can you talk a little bit about their fears, desires, and sins?
Yes. So one thing I will say about 2s that I just like to call out is I think a lot of women try or want to identify as a 2 because there's just that natural, maybe nurturing piece in all of us, especially if you're like a parent or, some kind of caregiver. That tends to be where women like to fall. So just being aware of that, not everybody is a 2, but women often try to put themselves into this number. But the thing about 2s is they're the people that like out of nowhere just will drop everything to come help or take care of you. The people I know that are 2s, it's just always like, I don't even have to ask, and they're like bringing me meals for the whole week. Or, they're like the above and beyond people that just are there to help and care. They're all about caring. So their basic fear, which this will make sense, is of being unloved. And so they feel loved through being needed. And so their basic desire then is to feel loved. And so their sin is pride. So they feel like they don't need help because they want to be able to help. They secretly believe that they alone know what's best for other people. And that they're indispensable. And so they really seek and need other people to need them, because that's kind of how they're defining being loved. But we really need to remind this number and these people that we love them, whether they're like constantly helping us or not. And they're probably the people too that we need to remind that you have to take care of yourself before you take care of other people. Because you can't take care of people the best when you yourself aren't healthy or well. So these are kind of some of the messages that they need to hear. And so, yeah, now we'll talk about how that plays into some of their exercise and nutrition habits.
Yeah. And while you were talking, I was like, that's totally my sister, which we'll talk about with recommendations with exercise and nutrition. But the individuals that are Enneagram 2s that are like currently exercising and practicing good nutrition, sometimes they struggle with things like emotional eating because they are so emotionally driven. And so their way to cope is to eat, because like you said, sometimes it's hard for them they're not naturally inclined to ask for help. And so the way they mask that is to, gorge and forget about it, because I think they're the forget, right? Part of that triad.
They're the externalizing ones. They're focusing on other people. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And on top of that, they share and they receive love through food. And this, I know a lot of people like this too, like a lot of people that love to cook for other people so that they can enjoy watching people enjoy their food. And they receive love through food. My sister's fiance cooks all the time, and that's sort of like their love language, it feels like. So yeah, definitely a lot of things around food. They are the people that are the most encouraging during workouts and group workouts. Like I love watching these people. They're always the people that are cheering and, cheering you on and saying, go, and you got this and things like that. They're the best spotters for lifting.
Yeah.
But just so encouraging. So you want these people in your circle when you're trying to, practice better exercise and nutrition habits, because they love that sense of community. And they're also like the soccer moms that want to bring treats after practice and after games. So, but with all this in mind, they do, and what Katie said, they do need to hear that the people are the main event, and that they need to fill up on the people, because that's really what fuels their fire, is get in that community and be around that community. And so when you recommend what they should do in fitness, do you have any good ideas for how they can be more fitness and nutrition oriented?
Yeah, for sure. So I think overarching thoughts are to do things that are group or partner oriented. So because it is a big motivator, driver for them to take care of other people, doing things like having accountability partners or group-oriented activities is going to be probably more motivating for these numbers for a 2. So some ideas might be like a high energy, fun programmed type of a class. So whether that be like group fitness or maybe like dance or Zumba, where you're getting energy from other people in the room and you're all doing it together and it's fun. I could see them maybe thriving there. Again, anything, if you're going to do more of a like individual type sport or activity, having an accountability partner. So somebody that you're doing it with, because you're going to feel that accountability towards them, that I've got to show up for that other person, or we're doing eating healthier together or exercising together. So for you, that's probably a big motivator to keep going, rather than trying to like do it all by yourself. Some other thoughts, like a running club, because again, you've got the other people, someone to do it with, a bike club, maybe some team sports if you like the sport realm better, like a bowling league. I know that's maybe random, but again, you're like socializing. It's another form of activity. Maybe like ballroom dancing, because now you've got like a partner and you're doing it together and you're helping each other get better. Another wild thought might be like a Tough Mudder or ropes courses, because you have to work as a team. And so it's more about working together again. So just some specific ideas on exercise that might be helpful.
Yeah, yeah. And I love that. I do think about my sister often because like you were mentioning before, it's important for them to know that they have to work on themselves in addition to working on other people, because they're so focused outwardly on other people. Sometimes they fall in this trap where they don't take care of themselves. So what they need to do and what they need to surround themselves, the people they need to surround themselves with, is that are the people that are going to encourage them to set time in their schedule to make sure that they're getting their workout in, or maybe they're doing that workout with them, or maybe they're food prepping with them and all of that stuff. So making sure they're intentional about knowing that even though I have to take care of my people, I have to take care of myself first. And so that is something that they definitely need to focus on. Another cool thing, which is relevant these days, is there's a lot of good exercise and nutrition groups on social media. You can just join a group and find that social interaction, and doing the meal prep and food and cooking and stuff with your family is huge. Yeah. And so all of that stuff is really important for nutrition, because I know we just talked about exercise. Is there anything else you can think about with nutrition?
Yeah,
Tools?
so nutrition, I think some things we can think about again with this group, food prep's going to be important or helpful. And for a 2, it's going to be helpful from the standpoint of if something comes up with another person that you care about and you feel the need to go help them, if the food is already prepared, you are much less likely to either skip eating altogether or grab something that's maybe less healthy. You know that food is already made, it's there. And so again, from the standpoint of taking care of yourself first, you're more likely to then eat healthier or stick to what you were trying to do to be healthier when stuff comes up, because as we know, when other people are involved, stuff always comes up. So again, the food prep ahead of time each week, planning out your meals, maybe getting them all made at the beginning of the week is going to be helpful. I think some other things that could be helpful, cooking and eating with family and friends. Again, especially if you can cook for people, that probably feels good for you. But ultimately, again, just that accountability, like Brittany said, of having other people who can then remind you, like, no, sit down and eat, or just to like help you stay on track is going to be really good. And then even maybe just being able to reach out to having family members or friends that you can reach out to when you are struggling to help keep you on track, or to get ideas for what foods could I incorporate or exercises I could do.
Yeah. And I love those ideas with eating with the family and friends, because I do feel like a lot of women are twos, even if they're like faux twos, they have two tendencies. So they
Yeah.
do want to be the nurturers. And I know that a ton of behaviors start in the family unit. And so if you can do more things like cook together, grocery shop together, all these things together, you're going to perpetuate better habits, and if you're a 2, going to feel more fulfilled at the same time. So definitely some great things to think about.
An interesting thing that I was reading about nutritionally with this group, we kind of mentioned it earlier, but this group might struggle with like at an event, so like a birthday party, for example, with feeling a need to sample or try everything that's been laid out for people to eat. And so they feel this need sometimes to, I'm at this event and these people took the time to make this. I should like make sure I eat all of it. When in reality, like, and so that they can fall into that pattern of always feeling like they need to eat the food out of respect for the other people. So going back to that messaging for them that might help is the event is about the people. You're there to celebrate someone's birthday. It's not about the food. The food comes with the event. So maybe trying to help rethink, why am I at this event, will help lessen the like need to eat everything that's there if maybe self-control is a little bit of a problem.
That's a really good point too. That is a great point for sure. The Enneagram 2. All right. Next to Katie, the Enneagram 3, which is the performer and the achiever. And I'll explain it a little bit, but obviously you're the pro. So these ones are, of course, they're achievers. So they're success oriented. So they want to be successful in everything they do. They're very practical. They can adapt well. So they call these guys the chameleons. So any situation you put them in, they can sort of adapt to that situation. Or if you put them in front of a person, they can adapt to that person. They excel in everything they do. They're very driven. And at the same time, they're image conscious because of all this. They want to make sure they look good. And so that sort of helps them along with being successful. They are so fueled by competition. And so you'll, in an exercise setting, you can definitely and clearly point out the people that are like that.
Obvious.
They're confident and they're efficient. And I think being efficient, or being so successful is a reflection of their efficiency. And they're very energetic to do it all. So that's an Enneagram type 3. Katie can tell us all about it, but I would love to hear about the fears and the desires and the sins that are associated with that too.
Yep. So I could give you so many 3 examples. Just a short example of like what 3s look like in the exercise world. When I was actually, anytime you're going through exercise, there's usually like a fitness test, but especially all of my exercise science classes, when you're learning how to, prescribe exercise, you do the tests yourself. So I'll just never forget, we were doing them. And I, of course, was over there trying to reach above standards on all of the outcomes. And this was just for class. There was like no reason that I needed to achieve it, but I personally needed to. And I'll never forget, one of my best friends, she finally was just like, Katie, but why? You're nothing about you achieving the like highest standard is going to change anything or impact your grade. There's like no reason. I was like, I don't care. I'd have to do it. So that's
the achiever, folks, right here in the flesh.
Right there. Anyway, so the basic fears of a 3 is worthlessness. We want to feel worthy. And so our basic desire is to feel valuable. Mm-hmm. And so we do that a lot of times by achieving. That usually helps us feel worthy and valuable. And achieving can look a lot of different ways. It's whatever the people we're looking to, kind of like how that group or those people have defined worthy. We adapt to that. So the vice or the sin of a 3 is deceit. More specifically, deceit of the self. So as Brittany said, we're often chameleons. And we're really good at putting on different masks or images in order to achieve what we're trying to achieve. But what can happen sometimes is you lose sight of your true self as you're changing a lot. And so you can kind of lose track of your true identity and who you really are and end up kind of deceiving yourself, which I've definitely had experiences with before. So that's something to think about. with a 3, but these people are very wired for productivity. I think a lot of like celebrity type people are probably a 3. They tend to fall in these categories. They're again motivated by a need to be or appear to be successful and avoid failure.
Yeah. And I think with all of that, it is definitely clear that a lot of successful athletes are also 3s, because you have to be success oriented. You have to be image oriented too, because there's a lot of people watching you. And so in exercise and nutrition, they tend to be goal oriented, but they will do any and everything to get to that goal and to get to success. And so sometimes you see a downward spiral in some athletes, like maybe they'll undereat, or they'll over exercise. They'll do more than they need to do because they have to be the best. And they do like making sure that people know. And so successful athletes, I mean, they thrive off of the people that are in whoever's watching them. And I think about these COVID times, and, you know, these basketball players that have, I mean, of course they have talent and they have skill, but I can imagine that the people in the room are so motivating to all these little 3s running around. And now that they don't have them, so I'm like, these poor people. But so yeah, just success oriented, image conscious, and it just makes them really, really strong people. Can you talk a little bit about any more of that stuff with their exercise and nutrition?
Yeah, I think again, since they're so goal oriented, and these people, sorry, bad internet. These people do work very, very hard. 3s, you know, they will put in the time. And so I think it's important to remind 3s that working harder doesn't necessarily always equate to reaching your goal faster, especially like when it comes to adaptation to exercise. Rest is almost equally as important into the equation as putting in the work. So I'm very guilty of this, but you like work so hard and you're just trying to do more and get there faster. But sometimes you do need those times to rest and recover and allow the adaptation to happen. So some good messaging for a 3 going into exercise nutrition things might be like everything in moderation. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. This is a message I hear a lot in my life, from my dad. And then another thing that might be important is to learn to love your body and not force it to be however you've defined the best. And so giving yourself some of that grace, and embracing more of the process rather than being so focused on reaching however you've defined the best as, because that may not always be completely attainable, or cause a lot of stress along the way. So some fitness exercise ideas for a 3, anything that's very goal oriented.
Yeah.
So it's funny right now, I spent most of my life as a competitive athlete. I ran cross country and track, and so I always had these goals to be a better athlete, and, you know, these scheduled practices and things. And now that I'm not an athlete anymore, it's really interesting to have to think through, how do I now set maybe different goals, or make it competitive again, even when I'm not like actually competing as in the way that we think about it. So some exercise ideas, anything that's short and intense, because again, 3s have a lot of things they're trying to do and achieve. So that'll help it fit within their day a little bit better if it's short and quick. So HIIT style stuff, Orange Theory, any of that's really good. They like doing things probably around people, something where they can really like show how good they are and receive, more than anything, I think receiving feedback is helpful. So they like it when people tell them good job, or notice that they're working hard, or we just like that feedback and knowing that other people see what we're doing. So group type stuff is going to be really good. Things like CrossFit, where there is like a competitive type of aspect to it. And there's maybe like personal best boards or all-time best, things where you can like really try to achieve to get on the board or get the gold star type of a stuff, is motivating for a 3.
Yeah.
Things like powerlifting or group fitness, or even if you're going to do an individual sport, which is where I was drawn, I think something that helps is signing up for competitions. So having a 5K or a marathon or a triathlon or something that you're training for, or trying to get to, is going to be a little more motivating than just every day going for a run. So those are some exercise things maybe to think about.
Yeah, lots of good stuff too. Definitely successful if you set yourself goals and making sure that you're able to establish, like we always talk about SMART goals, make sure it's specific, measurable, all of those things. But yeah, with nutrition, these people are they're kind of like ones in that meal prepping and planning is going to be good because these achievers tend to be busy just like ones. And so if they have everything prepped and planned, which I know you do on a regular basis, don't you
really
do
intense about
Sunday?
it.
Yeah. If you don't get it done Sunday, yeah.
Nope.
And
it has to get done Sunday because I don't want to do it any other day of the week because,
that's it.
again, I'm busy doing other things. So if it's already made, then I will eat healthy. I will eat all those things.
Exactly. And just like their exercise goals, there are nutrition related goals that you can have too, like count your macros, or if it fits your macros is perfect. So they have a goal to get to, I mean, anything on the Apple Watch or like a calorie count that you have to get to, something that they have to achieve is really good for them. So it can set them up they can set themselves up for success. And if they want to start eating healthy, I mean, you can talk about giving them a daily protein intake goal, or you're going to try to consume this amount of vegetables. And so they have a good, healthy goal to try to get to. But they can, because they're so success and achievement oriented, be plagued by issues with other things on the health scale, right? Like anxiety, maybe sleep and rest. So can you talk about maybe some things that these threes like you can consider for sleep?
Yep. So in our notes here, I literally in all bold wrote bonus consideration. You need to sleep. As a 3, extremely guilty of this, but 3s really need to hear that sleep and rest is important. And so this can be a really hard thing for them to do. But again, maybe helping think through, like, how do I make sleep a goal? Or, I think this is honestly where like the watch trackers that will track your sleep is kind of helpful, because you can see that number and, it's giving you the little bar. And did I meet the threshold? Nope. It's still in the bad zone and I need to get it to the good zone. And so those types of things might be kind of motivating, but making it a goal, and realizing that lack of rest and sleep will actually slow your progress. So as we're always trying to like get to wherever we're going quickly, we do need these times to recover to help us get there and be more focused and oriented. So that's going to be important. But then beyond that, yeah, I think just these people respond well to goals. So anytime you're struggling or lacking reaching those goals, trying to break it down, what are bite-sized goals, what are ways you can, have people keep encouraging you. The meal tracking is really good. I know, like, I respond well to things like that. Yeah. So anytime you can say these people, the message of like, get 30 grams of protein at every meal, like, okay, I will.
Yeah. Definitely going to get there. Yeah.
Then also teaching, once they get there, helping them then realize it's not like a do or die. Moderation's good too. So
that's great. Yeah. So many threes, such amazing people and productive people. But we're sort of flipping the script now, going from 3 to 4, like
Yep.
really different.
Totally different ballgame.
So type 4s are the individualists or they're romantic. So they're very emotionally oriented. They're sensitive. They can be withdrawn a little bit. Like I always think about actors and, things like that. Or artists. They're expressive and dramatic. Sometimes they can be self-absorbed because, I don't even know. They're artists.
There's a
They
lot
can,
of internal emotion happening in these
yeah,
people.
yeah, for sure. They're temperamental, creative, which makes them really good artists, and really introspective, which is good in this situation, so they can think about what they're doing and really, um, scan their way through it and figure out what they need to do. So, can you talk about their fears, desires, and their sins a little bit?
Yep, for sure. So these people, their basic fear is of having no identity or significance. So these people, their basic desire is to be uniquely themselves. So they're always, trying, they're the people that like really want to be unique and be their own person, and they don't want to like conform. They really feel this desire to need to express themselves in their very own unique way. So their vice or sin is envy, and that's going to be envy for wholeness and happiness. So there's always this part of them that they feel like is lacking or missing. And so they get envious of whatever's being perceived as whole or happy, because they always have this slight feeling of they haven't found their whole selves. So they're going to be very motivated by a need to be understood. They're going to be motivated by experiencing their large feelings and to avoid being ordinary.
Yeah.
So unlike threes who maybe adapt to what's going on around them in order to achieve in that setting, the fours want to be their own person.
Individualist, yeah.
Yes, so that's going to drive some of their nutrition and exercise habits.
Yeah, and they're very led by their heart and feeling. And so because of that, just like twos that we talked about, they can struggle with emotional eating. And they struggle with a lack of structure because of that too. They sort of like going with the flow and being, free-handing things. And so when you're, which I guess we'll talk about a little bit later, but when you're talking to these people, setting up some sense of structure for them and their exercise and nutrition is going to be good because they do struggle with that. They also struggle with consistency because it's boring to them. They'd rather be the creator of their own story. And so consistency is putting them in this box. They sort of sound like sevens sometimes too, where, consistency doesn't work for them. So encouraging them to work toward consistency, but being creative and doing it is going to be important. They think that exercise and nutrition routines are going to work for others, but won't work for them. That's sort of their MO with a lot of things. And because they're so artistic, another good thing is that they're motivated by music. So if they're working out or they're doing anything, they can be really pumped up by music. And then lastly, what I noticed too when I was doing my research is that because they're the individualists, these people are the people that can work out and do things by themselves. So, and they're completely fine with it. Like they don't mind it at all. So, what do you think about fitness and nutrition tips or ideas that they can focus on?
Yeah, so it's funny. I have a really good friend. Actually, I have a couple good friends who are true fours, and then I have a good friend who's like a 3-wing 4, which is fun to compare her and I because I'm a 3-2 and she's a 3-4. And so we're both threes, but it manifests very differently. So some things to think about with these people. creative and expressive, they might be drawn more to that. So yoga is very grounding and connecting for them, and they like that kind of free movement aspects of yoga. So yoga is going to be really good. Maybe like a spin class where they're surrounded by other people, but you're like still doing your own thing and adjusting it on your own. Let's see, dance, yoga, Zumba, anything that's a little bit more expressive in your movements and individualized. Some things like outdoor hiking, walking, where they can really be mindful and thoughtful and just think through their day. I think they tend to find very relaxing and motivating. But again, kind of like you said, these people might really thrive. They're really good at just doing what they feel like doing. So I'm just encouraging them, like, if that's what you feel like doing today, just do it. And that can change on your mood or the day, but just doing something, they're probably going to be better at just embracing that and doing what they're feeling.
Yeah, and I think you brought up a really good point. It made me think of when you talked about walking or hiking, and so they can have time to be introspective. It's like there is research that shows that low to moderate intensity aerobic activity where you're just continually moving lights up the areas of the brain where that are really involved in cognitive processes and thinking stuff through. So if you know a 4, some of the best exercise for them that suits their personality probably could be like that. Going for a walk, going for a hike, letting them be, let them churn through whatever they need to churn through, and, coach them through that. That's great for them with exercise. And nutrition is a great way too that they can express themselves. So with cooking, that's an amazing way to put your little flair on whatever you're doing. So you can make it visually appealing, or you can put your flair in, the taste of it and whatever it is. So that's a great way for them to express themselves. And because they're so music driven, I feel like I use music for everything, but putting on some tunes when you're cooking is a great way to just express yourself there. And I love the idea too of being creative and finding a recipe, but sort of making it your own. So what can I adapt in this recipe? How can I change it? How can I make it my own and really put your creative flair on it?
Yeah, definitely. I could see these people thriving with like food challenges. In the sense of like, okay, when I cook, I literally like cook by color. And I'm just like, oh, it needs now some green and some orange, and we're lacking this color. And I'm a 3, but I I think some of the 4 bleeds over, but I could see them being excited to try something like that, to be a little more creative, or how can I make this like visually appealing and it's a creative process and still taste good, or the kind of the challenges of like, here's a new ingredient or food item. What can I make with this ingredient or food item? So that may be a fun way for them to get excited about cooking again. I think these people also are probably good candidates for like intuitive eating. And getting more in tune with just how is the food making my body feel, and being aware of what you're eating. Intuitive eating, it's a really cool concept. You can do a lot of research on that. Maybe not good for everybody, those who like a lot of structure. This is more of a like free, I don't want to like explicitly say healthier form of eating, but it's to build a better, healthier relationship with the food. So these people, 4s, who are already, maybe a little more in tune with their feelings, might benefit from a more intuitive style. They might really be
absolutely.
receptive to that.
Yeah, I can't master that, but they can definitely do that. You were talking about before about like doing cooking challenges. I was thinking, I was like, some of the best chefs are probably three-wing fours, and it makes
Yeah.
so much sense. Like they're the achiever because they want to be the best, but they can make a plate, and I'm like, I don't even want to eat it because it looks so pretty. Like, what?
A
Am I
work of
supposed to
art.
eat this? Yeah,
Yeah, for sure. I think so. You're probably right.
so funny. Well, type 5 is next. Type 5 is the investigator. So they are very intense. They are cerebral, so they like to think through a lot of things. They're perceptive and aware of their environment. They can be innovative and create new things. And on the flip side, sort of, they can be secretive and isolated because I like to do all of that like research investigator work. They can, they're definitely observant, objective, insightful, and definitely calm. Like I know a couple people like this. They are. It's weird because they can be intense but calm at the same time, and they just know their stuff. Can you talk about their fears, desires, and sins a little bit?
Yeah. So again, these people, I just always think of them as the heavy researchers.
Yeah.
They like know all the facts about everything. But these people, their basic fear because of that is helplessness, incapability, and incompetence.
Mm,
So again, makes sense with their need to research and know all things. So then their basic desire is mastery and understanding.
mm.
So again, playing right into that, why these people are so maybe cerebral and big knowledge seekers. These people, actually, the more I learn about them, very fascinating to me because they're like the exact opposite of how my brain works. So it's really interesting to me to learn about these people.
Yeah.
They're much less emotional, so it really interesting. But their
Yes.
vice or sin is greed, which might not seem intuitive, but it's greed through hoarding things that they believe will ensure independence, self-sustaining existence. It's usually there's withholding of love and affection. So sometimes these people don't come off as relational as maybe some of our like heart triad people do that we just talked about. But it's like a self-preservation thing. They really are trying to conserve their energy and use it wisely and use it in areas where they feel is most necessary of their energy and time. And so again, they're not just gonna like spew energy in all directions on everybody. It's always very focused, intentional, and very fact driven.
Yeah.
So
I
yeah.
know some people like this. Oh my gosh. So yeah, and when it comes to exercise and nutrition, I think they can sort of get in their own way because they are so cerebral and they like to think about things and think things through. And because they fear so much being incapable and incompetent, they are sometimes really slow to begin anything. So they'll do their work, they'll do their research, um, and they won't start it for a long time. So just encouraging them to be like, you got enough facts, let's get this thing started is really important. And because sort of like a 3, they do so much work and they can get so focused on one thing and researching one thing, they can neglect some of the important things like eating. Maybe they'll skip lunch and not even realize it. Um, or, they'll miss their exercise class and not even realize it because they spent so much time invested in this one behavior. And so again, I think structure for them is going to be a little important. I sometimes with that, I feel like sometimes I have that tendency, like I can't pull myself away from some things. I have like some 5 and 10. I think as a researcher too, and you probably feel the same way. Sometimes you do just naturally do those type of things. It's hard for me to pull myself away. And so I do spend some days where I skip lunch and I'm like, did I even eat lunch? Yeah, but they're intense and cerebral, so they prefer to do things and take their challenges by themselves. So they might, do their 5K and train for their 5K the entire time themselves and race themselves. And they like to research what is going to work best for them, which makes sense because they're the investigator. But yeah, that's normally the characteristic traits of a 5 with exercise and nutrition. Do you have any ideas with how they can maybe be a better 5 in this area?
Yeah. So exercise ideas. Well, this is going to fall in both categories, but diet and exercise tracking, or journaling, again, might be good for these people. So going along with, they might get so focused on whatever it is that they're researching, or learning about, that they might skip meals. On the flip side, they might also do a lot of mindless eating, not really thinking about what they're eating or how much they're eating, because they're too busy simultaneously thinking about whatever it is they're thinking about. So getting them to just track, or just even at the minimum, just write down what they're eating or track it, might be really helpful to help them be more cognizant of those habits. The other thing it can do for them that they might really thrive on is, now they have data to analyze. And so that might be really appealing to them, to be able to track it and think about those numbers. And they might find that very interesting and rewarding to do. So any kind of tracking apps or devices or habits are probably going to be motivating for this group. Some other thoughts might be just like consistent cardio, something where you don't have to overthink it. So that seems like a more low-level achievement of, I can just go run, put on some shoes, go do it, or just get out and go for a walk. Something that doesn't need a lot of preparation or understanding of rules, might be an easy first step. On the flip side, I do think I could see these people thriving in really technical activities or sports.
Yes.
Something that they do really have to think and strategize. So weirdly, a bunch of racket sports came to mind for me. Things like badminton or tennis, racquetball, pickleball, where there's like a lot of strategy in the movement and there's technique. So things where you're like, you really have to think about what you're doing. I could see them really enjoying things like that.
And a lot of martial arts are like that too.
Yeah.
Like I practiced jujitsu for a while. They call it chess.
Yeah.
Because you have to be intentional about every move. So that they would definitely thrive in that situation.
Yeah, I could see them really thriving there. Yep.
Yeah. I think I've seen a lot of investigators in that.
Yep. The people I know, I could see them, them really embracing that.
Yeah.
I was thinking, if they're going to do more things like a 5K, finding a program that they do like and enjoy, and they probably are really able to train by themselves. That consistent cardio, again, might be a good time for them to move while thinking. Might give them some freeing time to think through. Movement does really help with that processing and securing of knowledge. So that might be really helpful for them. Other thoughts, maybe a pre-programmed or scheduled type of event. I think I was thinking with this group, like a team sport where it's already scheduled for this time. We're going to show up and do it. Again, something to just make it low level, so you don't have to do a lot of research on where do I need to go, what do I need to bring, blah, blah, blah. Like maybe if it's already pre-scheduled, it might be helpful. Just some thoughts. Let's see.
And in that same vein too, I think in that same vein, I was thinking that same thing with nutrition. So it's like maybe setting an alarm for your lunch or something. If you have a tendency of skipping lunch, and having that scheduled so that you're motivated to eat would be good. And I too was thinking when you were talking that having people, because they're slow to commit, maybe having people in your circle that will encourage you to commit, maybe having somebody that's a bit more proactive and maybe doesn't think rationally all the time. So
I do a 7.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, I do love a good 5. Podcasts are really hot these days. So they would probably, like you said, if they were to go on their steady state cardio, they could just throw a podcast in and they could listen and do research that way. Maybe a nutrition or exercise podcast, make it even better.
Yeah.
Yeah, and researching cooking skills. I mean, cooking, you can get in depth with cooking. And so if you're
Yeah.
an investigator, you could do, look into a new cooking skill, maybe learn that cooking skill, see what it's all about, and try to master it, I think, is
I
something
could see these people, there's like cookbooks that are based on like the chemistry of cooking, and
like
I could
Alton
see that
Brown.
it might, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I could see them really getting into something like that of like what all is actually happening here. Let's see, I know some like 6-wing 5s, and even with diets, that investigative piece comes out and they really want to know all the details and like the science behind it. So anything, fad diets probably aren't going to be a good choice for these people. They're not usually good in general, but
Yeah, no.
but like avoiding stuff like that doesn't have a lot of evidence, but for them, encouraging them to like go find the evidence for it that's supporting behind it, go do your research, but then not getting bogged down in it.
Yeah. And committing. Yeah.
Yep.
They're good. Very good. The next one, type 6s, I also think are interesting because my best friend in the entire world, her, Amber, is 100% a 6. And I haven't told her to her face, but I'm like, I'm learning about you so much. She's a loyalist and a skeptic, which basically means that she is loyal to a T. Like she would throw herself in front of a car for you, but she is so skeptical about any and everything that she can be skeptical about. They're committed, they're security oriented, so they need to feel secure, which is part of the reason why they're such a skeptic. So if I'm inviting anything new into my life, that is potentially gonna like invade my security bubble. So I need to be secure. They're engaging, responsible. They can be anxious because they need to feel secure. They can be suspicious because they need to be secure. They're very loyal. They can be witty, and good troubleshooters too. So can you talk about these 6s: fear, desire, and sin?
Yes. So maybe unsurprisingly, this group's basic fear is being without support or guidance. So again, they're seeking that constant security. So their basic desire is to have support and guidance.
Mm-hmm.
And so their sin is going to be fear and worst case scenario thinking. And they're often going to question everything around them. They're always like prepping for worst case scenario, worried about worst case scenario. And they're often questioning their ability to handle life in general. So these people tend to be like your big over planners for events or trips who, they've packed everything in the kitchen sink because what if it rains? What if there's a tornado? What if there's a zombie apocalypse in the middle of our trip? Like these people are like always super prepared for any and all case scenarios, because this is their basic fear. So yeah, now we can move to how that influences exercise and nutrition habits.
Yeah, and the thing that I think about the most is their inner skeptic. Today's day and age, there are so many new trends coming out, exercise and nutrition trends. And if you throw one of those in front of my friend's face or another 6's face, they're going to be like, I don't know about that. I'm going to stick with what I'm doing. And so, I mean, it's good in a sense because they won't just jump into it and buy into it like any and everybody else does. So they definitely, they have that. But when they do find an exercise program that works for them and they're not skeptical anymore, then they're committed and they'll stick to it. And I've seen this in a lot of people. Like they'll stick with the gym, they'll stick with a coach, trainer for a while because they're so loyal and committed. Yeah, can you think about anything else with these 6s?
Something before we get into like examples that might be helpful or motivating for this group, I think encouraging them to go do the research so that they can feel safe and secure in what they're doing might be helpful. So rather than just blindly going into something, showing them some facts, some evidence that it works, and we're not just gonna like harm ourselves in the process, might be a little more comforting for this group. So just some examples of things that this group might enjoy. Right off the bat, some thoughts are weightlifting, or like MMA or boxing or kickboxing. This might sound strange because that doesn't sound safe up front, getting punched. But it might help them tap into something that helps them feel more powerful or strong. If they do have this like constant kind of fear, it might be a way to feel a little more like powerful and in control of the situation type of a thing. So maybe not like fighting another person, but just those boxing classes type of a situation might be really empowering for a 6. Some other ideas might be fitness classes that provide a competitive group fitness vibe, where you can support other people, do it with other people. Let's see what else. Something you can really stay committed to. So like a running group where you're with other people. Again, safety, security. Those are some upfront ideas. Some fitness things that maybe focusing on mastering. So again, maybe like martial arts, yoga, bar, might be good for this group.
Yeah. So cool. And I think there's a lot of nutrition things they can take away too. There's sort of exercise and nutrition blends. We've talked about the tracking apps, and this will be a great opportunity, I think, for them to support other people, because if you've used tracking apps before, you know that you can follow your friends and your family, and you can support each other, and you earn little badges and all that stuff. So I think that's a great way to support other people and be loyal and committed to other people. Maybe in person post-COVID, we can do a lot of classes together, like nutrition classes. I think that's a dying lost art, and I'm sad about it because I love a good nutrition or cooking class, but I think 6s would thrive there because they'd sort of, be loyal and committed and to all their friends. But like you were saying, a 5K, I think is great. Yeah, I think that's a lot of a 6 for sure. So 6s, yeah, I have to tell you this. Amber's going to hate me, but I've been an Orange Theory coach, for almost 6 years. And I remember like 2 years ago, I mentioned it to her. I was like, listen, you gotta be a coach. And it's so funny that she is a 6 and me as a 7 are best friends, because sometimes we don't see eye to eye. But I told her about 2 years ago, I was like, you gotta be an Orange Theory coach. And as a 7, I get frustrated sometimes when like people don't take my advice and they like run with it or they resist it, because I'm like, you should listen to me because I'm wise. And it took her a year to realize. She was like, I should look into this because I need a second job. And she did. And homegirl loves it now. I'm like, 365 days ago, you were a little skeptic, you 6. And this is what I'm talking about. Like, I'm learning so much about her, but now she's a great coach, and she's so loyal to Orange Theory and I'll say she's loyal to the people that are in her class. Like, she wants nothing more than these people to succeed and get to their goals. So.
No, and I think that's such a stereotypical 6, the 6s I know in my life. Like, I can tell them things, but until they've like read it, learned it, done it on their own, it almost is like it doesn't fully they don't trust it until they've done their research. So it's always like, I think I would encourage them, like, yes, seek out maybe advice from people that you can trust, but then like go do your research so that you feel confident in what you're doing. I can just so many times I was like, I've said that like 5 cajillion times. And you finally read it in that like blog, but sure, we got there. So
Yep. Trust the process.
yep.
You're 6. Well, next is type 7. That is myself. They're the enthusiast. So they are busy and fun loving. They're busy because they overwhelm their plate because they like to have multiple options. That's like classic. They're spontaneous. They're versatile, distractible. So much, and they can be scattered. I have so many examples. I'll try to keep it short, but they're adventurous, imaginative, enthusiastic, spontaneous, blah, blah, blah. Can you talk about my basic fears, desires, and sins? Because I don't want to talk about that.
Let me tell you about yourself. Yep. So the basic fear of a 7 is being unfulfilled, trapped, or deprived. So this is a lot of what goes behind their like adventure seeking, spontaneous type of living, is to feel satisfied and content. So that's going to be their desire, is to seek those things. And so their sin is they tend to fall into gluttony. And that gluttony comes from a way to avoid painful feelings. They really don't want to feel emotional pain. So they're going to do everything in excess if that helps them to avoid the pain. So they're big excess people. Again, but they're going to be motivated by a need to be happy, plan stimulating experiences, and again, just anything to avoid that pain. So these people are tons of fun. Everybody wants to be a 7 because they're usually like the life of the party, very fun people. But as you can talk about, Brittany, there's usually some avoidance going on there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see this showing up in my life a little bit more with nutrition and less with exercise, but I'm sure it's all encompassing. We don't like any type of restriction. So diets are like so bad for a 7, because if you say that you can't have something or you have to do this, 7s are like, what? Why would you tell? Like, I'm going to go the other direction
I'm
completely.
doing it then.
Yeah. And if that's the case, if they do end up feeling trapped, they are so much more prone to things like overeating or binge eating behaviors. And I've fallen in that circle. I mean, I've been there where it's like I've cleaned out my cupboards because I'm trying to be a better consumer eater. And then I end up like going to Friendly's and getting a frozen yogurt and all this stuff because I just can't give myself that rigidity and that structure. And I've also learned this past year in my transition, my journey with this Enneagram, that, like I said before, structure and workouts don't work for me either. So I need to personally, and I know a lot of 7s need to have a lot of different things to choose from when they do their workouts throughout the week. So for instance, I can't say that on Monday I'm going to do Orange Theory or on Wednesday I'm going to do yoga. It's got to be like, what are my options? What's available? And at that moment, whatever I feel like doing is what I'm going to do. So that's some things that I've noticed. The commitment just can't be there, because as a 7, when you think about committing to one thing, you think about not committing to the other 700 things that you're not committing to. And yeah, so that's typically the characteristic. They do like discipline. They don't like discipline because, it can go both ways, and you can probably talk about this a little bit more. So I think they need discipline a little bit, but like I like to say, they like to have a long leash. So they're still leashed, but they like to have enough freedom that they can do whatever they want to do. So I think 7s are probably the most infuriating people to work with nutrition and exercise, because you can't really give them a diet, or you can't give them an exercise program. You have to work with them and be like, how am I going to be able to help you on this long leash? So yeah, that's the habits, the exercise and nutrition habits of them, the 7s. So do you have any ideas with how to help me?
Well, it's funny through the whole thing. Through the whole thing, I just laughed because it's so different from being a 3. I was even talking with Ryan the other day about what it was like working out with you as a 3 with a 7.
Uh-huh.
And you're like creativity and workouts, for you it's like you walk in and you're like, oh, today let's do X, Y, and Z. And just like you said, like you aren't like gonna say Monday I do this, Tuesday I do this. But then like for a 3, I have my week structured. It's like, no, on Monday I do HIIT. Tuesday and Thursday I lift. Wednesday is a long run day. Saturday is a long run day.
I envy you.
Or even like within the workout, it's like, no, I need to know exactly what we're doing. That way, when it's time to shine, I can shine. So it cracks me up.
Yeah,
But anyway,
she always says too, she's like, I can see when you have an idea because your eyes get really wide and you get really excited, and then we drop everything we're doing and we go that way. I was like, yeah, because it's a great idea and we're going to go do this. Yeah, she's great though. She has so much grace with me because like you said, as a 3, that will be hard to work with, but she's like, it's Brittany. Let's move
yeah.
forward.
No, and we need that like creativity sometimes and that just like spontaneity. It's great. I'm way too structured in my life. So it's good to have that. So yeah, some ideas for a 7. So going back to the like discipline thing, 7s really like freedom, creativity, to be able to just like be spontaneous. But I wonder if the better word rather than like discipline is maybe like boundaries. Helping these people to establish some boundaries and some discipline in what they're doing. So it's not just so spontaneous and all over the place, but what can we do to make sure we're not just eating in excess or exercising in excess, or maybe if we have some negative health behaviors, make sure we're keeping things within a healthy realm. So let's see, some ideas. For these people, I think doing some mindset work is going to be helpful. Again, like in the behaviors I'm doing in excess, like where is that coming from? We might need to stop and just address some underlying behaviors first. Before moving forward. So that might be an important thing to do. But then some easy ideas, high energy dance classes, where, the workout's different every time. So dance is really expressive and exciting and fun. So that could be fun. But I also think just like, I don't know, those like even like Orange Theory or boot camp stuff or circuit style exercise where we're doing like 20 different exercises within the workout. Like for you, probably doing a whole like deadlift specific workout probably is like boring. You're like, where's the fun in that? But, or, like I've done YouTube workouts where it's like 30-minute where we don't repeat any exercise twice, and that like kind of bothers me as a 3, but I could see a 7 thriving with that of like, oh yeah, let's do all the exercises and do different things, and they want to mix it up. And so those group fitness style classes where it's always different and changing probably would really thrive and stuff like that. Some other ideas that I had, like adventure races or those really fun 5Ks where it's like glow in the dark 5K or color run, or where there's just this like fun aspect to it. And you're doing it with people and it has this like, I don't know, adventurous type aspect to it. But then just for like building good behaviors, I think like scheduling it as part of your day. I feel like, Brittany, that's something you always do a really good job of, and maybe as a way that you build in discipline is I always feel like you have this like schedule. And I feel like you're good at like being free with your schedule, but it's like I do this at this time and I go to bed at this time, and I think that might be a helpful thing.
Yeah, definitely scheduling. I do. And I think you explained it well. I do have a little bit of a schedule first because I know if I don't get it done in the morning, I won't do it. but I also allow there to be flexibility in the schedule. So I think that's important to a 7. It's like like you said, you're setting boundaries in your daily schedule, but you also need to provide yourself with flexibility, because if not, you're going to compensate and succumb to gluttonous behaviors, and that's not great. What I also
Mm-hmm.
noticed too that might be good for 7s from a nutrition standpoint is which is also good for overall diet, is doing grocery shopping more often throughout the week, because meal planning, like I said, isn't great. And so if you go grocery shopping more often, you're buying more fresh food, fresh produce, things like that. And you're able to make meals that are more exciting and don't get old more often throughout the week. So I think that from a diet standpoint, from a nutrition standpoint, that might be a great idea. Lots of flavors in foods, like chicken boiled is my arch nemesis. I can't
That's like
do it.
all that I eat.
Oh, so funny.
I love it.
7s. All right. Next is the type 8. Type 8s are the challengers, and we both know an extreme type 8.
Yep.
Yes, Sir David. He is really powerful and dominating, which is great. I think these are good sort of athletic or athletes too, and maybe more like politician type of people. They know how to work confrontation. So they're confident, they're decisive, they're willful, confrontational, like I said. They are never one to shy away from confrontation. And the thing is that when they do indulge in those behaviors, they don't really see it as negative. They see it as productive and just a way to have conversation. But some people definitely see it as a bit more abrasive. I'm definitely a 7 wing 8, so sometimes, especially in a research environment, I can be that way. Yeah, protective, energetic, loyal, resilient. So can you talk about their fears, desires, and sins?
For sure. So my first thought on 8s, when I think of an 8, I'm always like, this is the person I want in my corner when like I need someone to stand up for like a point or for me, or
Yeah.
you need someone that will just like fight for you. You got to go find yourself an 8. So these people do really like to debate, and if they feel passionately about something, will like really argue and fight for it. So their basic fear is being controlled, harmed, or violated. And so their basic desire is for self-protection. And so a lot of that like debatability and confrontation and that like more aggressive behavior comes out of that like self-protection. And
Yeah.
they don't want to be told what to do or things like that. So that's kind of where their behaviors come from. So their sin is they lust for intensity. And so everything these people do just kind of has a certain level of intensity to it. Again, I think 8s are kind of fascinating because they're very different than me in general. So I just find it very fascinating the way they think and reason through things. But they're motivated by a need to be strong and avoid feeling weak or vulnerable. So we can talk about how that influences some of their behaviors.
Yeah. Yeah. And you see this all the time. I see this in fitness all the time. Like that's the person that you tell them to go do a 200-meter row and they're going to complete it, get off the rower and vomit. Like they're the people that go all the way to the wall and never turn around, like drive through the wall. So given 110%. And it's funny that you say that they want to be strong. I see these people sort of like David that maybe excel in things like resistance exercise. So they want to go to that last rep. They want to physically be strong. And a lot of that too, I've seen this too with things like spotters and people that you're working out with. They're like super intense. They're the person that you want that's spotting you, where the bar might be coming down on your chest, but their yelling is like, I'm like, all right, fine, I'm going to get it off. Like, jeez. Like they're just yelling at you, really good motivators. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, like you said, that's the person you want in your corner. So they're going to support you and motivate you at the same time as they're like defending you and all that. So definitely great in an exercise setting. Um, in a nutrition setting, I'd imagine that it's pretty similar too for a diet. They're just intense, committed.
Yep.
Yeah. What about some things that they can do?
Yes. So, kind of a message that this group maybe needs to hear is that self-care isn't for the weak.
Mm.
And so for them, so eights fall within the like body realm and the anger triad. And so eights, though, especially like need to move their bodies regularly because there's a lot of like energy going on in them with all that intensity.
Mm.
And so, yes, really, the first thing that might come to mind is really intense type workout. So, like weightlifting, powerlifting, boxing, martial arts, that just like, let's hit it out, pound it out, go hard, lift heavy. Anything like that is going to be really appealing, but it might actually be really helpful too for these people to incorporate things that are maybe less intense to help calm some of that down instead of just feeding into it all the time. So some walking, hiking, again, yoga, things that maybe where we're just breathing, trying to get some of that relaxing, but relaxing through movement is still going to be really good. So something else these people might really be receptive to is the idea of exercise snacks. There's kind of a big push for this right now in science of let's just go move for 10 minutes, or at work, let's just like get up and walk down the hall, or how do we just like work little bits of exercise in throughout our day to be more active. So these people might be really responsive to that and see a lot of benefit from that by just trying to get up and release some energy throughout the day. It doesn't have to be intense. It can be intense. It can be something like get out of your chair and do like 20 squats, or maybe we like walk around the building, but that movement they really I think could benefit from.
Yeah, that's great. And I think the balance is really important too. And again, I thought of David because it's so funny that he talks about he used to do a lot of yoga. And I'm like, you? Like, he's just a huge dude. I'm like, don't you just get under a bar and lift heavy weights? But it's really important for them, like you said, to strike that balance because all of their life they're just full throttle.
Mm-hmm.
And I think too that they're very strong-willed. So if you do give them a challenge as a practitioner, if you do say, let's look at what healthy eating looks like for you, or let's look at what, a sound exercise program looks like for you, and you give that to them, their will is likely strong enough that they're going to be able to complete that. So that's definitely a strength of them.
Mm-hmm.
I think this will be funny too, is having a healthy cooking competition between you and your friends or your family so that their intensity can come out. Like I can imagine that they will just be so into it with that sort of competition atmosphere.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, lastly, we have the type 9, which is the peacemaker. And it is just that. I mean, they're super easygoing. They are really receptive and reassuring. They're agreeable and complacent, friendly, open-minded, all of the good things. And I always picture like a Zen yogi just going through life and going through the waves of life and all that. Can you talk about their fears, desires, and sins a bit?
Yes. So for a 9, they have a basic fear of loss, fragmentation, separation. And so their basic desire is for wholeness and peace of mind.
Mm.
And so then their sin tends to be sloth, which people immediately then just stereotype them as lazy. But it's not necessarily like physically lazy all the time. It's more of spiritually lazy. They're just maybe a little more slower to act because they really like peace. and calm, that might come off as lazy. So something to think about with them, but they're really motivated by a need to keep the peace, to merge with others, and to avoid conflict. So it's actually really funny. I have a little sister and we look identical, but we are like opposites. She is a 9 and I am a 3. And so we laugh all the time. And it makes so much more sense now that I know that she's a 9 and I'm a 3. But like my idea of fun and like relaxing is like movement. I'm always like, let's go do something, or like be outside, or go for a run, or it's always something active. And she's always like, can we just like lay down for a while, or like let's just like movie marathon is her heaven. Or she went, like, even this Christmas was hilarious. I like everything I got was like active based, and everything she got was like cozy, warm, lay down. I just always think of lay down. So these people, very different things that they're going to be motivated by. They are very motivated by like keeping the peace. They don't like anything that's super intense, over the top, highly energized. They just want to like do their thing. Not that they can't be intense, because they very much can be. But that's usually that type of, with other people, that's usually not where they're thriving.
Yeah. And that you could definitely see that in the exercise setting. And I know I have years of yoga under my belt, and I've seen this so much with yogis. They just embody this, like you said, relaxed, calm personality. And because of that, they love yoga. Like some yoga can be challenging and powerful and all that stuff, and they do thrive in those settings. But if you give them a slow flow, a yin yoga where they're just holding postures and sitting still, most of the time laying down, they're gonna thrive. But another thing too that makes them similar to another Enneagram number is that they can be slow to start fitness routines because they tend to procrastinate a little bit. And putting somebody in your squad, maybe like you for your sister, that can tell them, be like, let's start this, let's get this going. And being that motivator for them, I think would be really important. So they also tend to be pretty disconnected from their body. So they do need to understand and know that exercise is really important for us to reconnect. And we talk a lot about mind-body connection, not only in exercise, but also in things like yoga. And so reconnecting mind with body it is going to be important for them. And the exercise is a great way for them to do it. So again, having somebody in their life to remind them that that's the case is really important. Can you think of any ideas for these folks?
Yes. So for these people, I think first and foremost, similar to like maybe a 4, I would encourage them to just do something. It doesn't, don't over stress on what you're doing. Just pick an activity or something you like to do that involves movement and just go do it. First and foremost, just to get them out the door. Because I think a lot of times if it's too intense or there's too much planning involved or logistics involved, they're going to procrastinate more because it's just more to think through, more energy spent doing other things, and it's going to just provide more barriers. So just first and foremost, if they want to do it, just go do it. Don't overthink the process. But otherwise, I think for them, accountability, kind of like you said, is going to be really good. So finding someone to do it with. Again, they're peacemakers. They like to go along with kind of what's happening. And they're usually pretty happy to just tag along, do it. And so finding someone, though, to like do it with, be accountable with, can be really enjoyable. Scheduling the exercise, I put a question mark next to this, but kind of like you said, as being a 7, maybe morning exercise, just a thought to think about. morning exercise can help energize you and, give you that boost you need to get going in the morning. So it could help with the rest of your day. Plus then it's done. And then when you come home from a long day of work or whatever you've been doing, you can just relax and do that part. So they might thrive with trying to schedule it in the morning. If you're like my sister, though, you really like your sleep time. So do what's best for you, but something to think about. I do think like outdoor workouts are really good for these people, just getting outside, some fresh air. Endurance exercise might be appealing because at first they, maybe don't like to go that long, but they do have a good amount of endurance once they get going. And so that doesn't have to mean like running, but like maybe biking and just going on long sightseeing bike rides, or maybe swimming is really therapeutic and repetitive, or just going on a nice hike. That's even like low intensity, but just that consistent movement can really help them with connecting with their body. And again, they do have good endurance. I know like my sister does really like just long social bike rides or a nice social hike. So those are things that are thriving. From a group fitness setting, I think things like a spin class could be good because you are with people and they're directing you, but it is still like self-directed. So you're like setting and adjusting your intensity. The spotlight's not directly on you. You can just do your thing within the group. But that can be really good. And then ultimately, I think exercise wise, and then we'll move to nutrition. I think whatever it is, just educating yourself on why those things are important tends to help with the motivation. So if they know that, hey, exercise is good for my health, so I just need to make sure I do it, that gives them enough motivation to make sure it's worked into their day. And I'll talk about that more with diet because I know some interesting diet things with nines too. But
yeah, well, I think I'll just let you keep your momentum. It sounds like a lot of the diet stuff parallels the exercise stuff anyway. So go on with your bad stuff, girl.
Just keep on going.
Yeah.
So with diet, I think same thing, like intuitive eating probably works well with these people. They just can think through, where am I at with food? If I'm hungry, I'm going to eat something. If I'm not hungry, I'm not going to eat something. I think they would be really good at that, just being in tune with their eating habits. And I see this with my sister, for a long time, she was a pickier eater. But me being nutrition, exercise, I talk about it a lot. And so, she will like now eat a salad sometimes because she knows, vegetables are important and she should eat them occasionally, and that's juxtaposed with like, she'll do like really sugary breakfast cereal, but that's because she loves it. And so that's, again, back to the intuitive eating of just like, she loves those non-healthy things, but she does know she needs the other stuff. So she will work it in there and do it, which is really great. Or she now will make sure there's, some proteins, and that after workouts, that's a good time to do that. And
probably also helps that she has a sister that does protein research.
Exactly. But I think what I appreciate about nines is they like hear those things, but they're really good at moderation. Unlike a 3, like I have to take everything to an extreme, or I tend to. She's a lot more like, okay, so I'll add some here and I'll add some there, and isn't like tied to having to like do everything at an extreme or above and beyond or be the best at it. Like she is very good at, this is what I need to do and what I want to do. And so I think nines are good at that. Something I heard the other day too, for nines might fall into this for exercise, is if they're not really motivated to exercise or don't really like to exercise, just even do like progressive relaxation, where just like tensing your muscles while you're still nicely laying there. But just that tensing and relaxing There's still some benefits from that. And it does help just release tension. And it is really mind-body connecting if you go through like each muscle in your body and let's tense and relax that one. So that can be a good alternative to still get like stress releasing benefits from exercise without doing anything super movement oriented.
I love that. I actually use that a lot with my final Shavasana in class. Yeah. When I teach yoga classes, it's great. Yeah. Very cool. Well, I mean, we went through the gamut, all the every single Enneagram number. And I just love talking about this conversation, talking about this topic, because it, like I said in the beginning, it's so applicable to everybody. You have to know yourself before you make any behavioral change, because I say that, I mean, you can will yourself to do anything. Like I can say for 4 weeks, I'm going to eat keto, and I can do that. But if I don't know my internal why, my heart, my personality, I'm never going to be able to understand exactly why I'm doing that, and let alone be able to sustain it. And I think that for exercise and nutrition, for me, when I'm talking with people, my main goal for you is for you to be able to sustain your behaviors. And so I love to coach people to get to know themselves better. And I think that the Enneagram has shown me that I can change and shift my eating and my exercise behaviors based on who I am. And that is completely okay, to be honest. I mean, you have to fuel your own fire. So, I mean, overall, I really appreciated having you on, Katie. It was so great to chat with you. And my goodness, so knowledgeable on exercise, nutrition, and the Enneagram. If you have any questions for Katie in any of those fields, I encourage you to message her. I'm going to have Katie's contact information in the show notes. And like I said, I'll also have a link for the book that we were talking about, which I also have and I'm reading through right now. So I highly, highly encourage you to get that. It's on Amazon. But with that, I mean, we'll close out. Any further comments, Miss Katie?
No, thanks for having me. It was a ton of fun. I love the Enneagram and don't always get to talk about it. So it's fun to merge my love of nutrition exercise with the Enneagram. And yeah, happy to take questions or provide more resources on that. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Hey guys, I am so excited for my new book entitled Through His Strength by Improving Ours, Family, to be released on February 4th. This book has been strategically designed to educate parents and caretakers on what the Bible and research have to say about exercise and nutrition. And then after they soak in all that good information, they will rally the family troops and complete discussion questions and fun practical application activities. To learn more about my new book, visit my website at www.drbrittanyRallman.com. That's www.drbrittanyRallman.com.